A presidential candidate's pregnant mistress kept in high style in luxury hotels like the Four Seasons in Santa Barbara and ferried across the country in private jets. Hundreds of thousands of dollars stashed in a secret bank account. The details read like a racy Hollywood script, but they are, in fact, part of a federal criminal indictment. The defendant, Johnny Reed Edwards, better known as John Edwards.
I will regret for the rest of my life the pain and the harm that I've caused to others. But I did not break the law, and I never, ever thought I was breaking the law.
But tomorrow, the former Democratic U.S. Senator is set to go on trial in North Carolina. He is accused of misusing campaign funds in his failed presidential bid and then lying about it.
I don't respond to these lies.
A stunning fall from grace.
Edwards was arguably the best-known, most successful trial lawyer in modern North Carolina history. He came out of nowhere to run for the U.S. Senate and won. Catapulted himself on the national stage as the vice presidential nominee.
Hampton Dellinger, a practicing lawyer and a former deputy attorney general in North Carolina, says no other national candidate has faced criminal charges like these that could land Edwards in prison for 30 years.
When I teach campaign and election law, I talk about the typical political corruption cases where essentially an office holder or candidate is selling something, an earmark, an ambassadorship, in the case of Governor Blagojevich, a U.S. Senate seat, in exchange for campaign or personal support. None of that is what has happened here.
The prosecution's star witness is Andrew Young, Edwards' former aide. He's likely to say at trial what he wrote in his 2010 book. The two wealthy people, the late trial attorney Fred Barron and Virginia philanthropist Rachel Bunny Mellon, paid nearly $1 million to hide Rielle Hunter, John Edwards' pregnant girlfriend, from both the press and from his wife Elizabeth, who was dying of cancer. Young says Mellon even hid the money in boxes of chocolate. But the key question is, was that money campaign funds?
It wasn't directed to his campaign.
2 races down.
They didn't pay for ads, they didn't pay for polls, but they did keep his campaign viable.
The defense claims that the money instead went to Andrew Young, and Young has credibility problems. He originally claimed he was the father of Hunter's baby, and the government gave him full immunity to testify. But he's not the only one caught in a lie. This was John Edwards' response when ABC News asked if he was the father of Rielle Hunter's baby.
True? Not true. Not true.
There's no defending John Edwards' conduct. It was deplorable, loathsome, pick any adjective. He wasn't just hiding it from the American people, but from his cancer-stricken, dying wife. You really can't get lower than that.
It is no surprise that Melanie Sloan, a former prosecutor who now runs Crew, a Washington ethics watchdog group, doesn't like John Edwards. But what is surprising is that Sloan believes the case against him should be thrown out.
If the Justice Department believes that the money that Fred Barron and Bunny Mellon spent constitute campaign contributions, then they need to change the law to make it clear. But it doesn't mean you get to prosecute somebody who had no notice that this was against the law and then try and create a crime that way.
Federal prosecutors declined to be interviewed, but according to court documents, the Justice Department has spent vast federal resources to pursue this case. At least 56 FBI and IRS agents were employed in the nearly 4-year-long investigation.
After all these years, I finally get my day in court, and people get to hear my side of this.
The trial was delayed for several months in part because Edwards' lawyers had asked it to be postponed while he was treated with medication for atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat. And there's this. John Edwards was reportedly offered a plea deal. It would have involved a few months in federal prison, but Edwards would have been allowed to keep his law license. He turned it down.
It's an incredible gamble on his part. I think one could argue that there's a real recklessness to it if there was any way for him to avoid jail time as part of a plea agreement. Same for the government. It's left both sides taking a very big risk.